He says, how fine is the line of you going too slow and seeming weak and putting yourself in the friend zone? And then he retyped his question. He says, I meant to say, how fine is the line when you go slower than she is and going too slow and putting her in the friend zone? So the reason why I say that is, and I'm sure the girls can attest to this, is guys are impatient. They're impatient when it comes to getting laid. They're impatient when it comes to getting serious. And they're usually trying to go faster than the woman is. In other words, they're trying to get into a relationship before the woman is emotionally ready. And so that's why, as the book says, and why I always insist on you guys reading it 10 to 15 times, is you're trying to go slightly slower than she is. It doesn't mean you turn into a statue. I mean, everything applies. And so I'm talking about the dating and the courtship. You know, you go to kiss a woman when the signs are there that she's ready to be kissed, ready to be touched, ready to be seduced, and you're going to be respond based on her behavior. The idea is you're taking measured steps, one date a week, and as you take one date a week, and typically, because after with most women, after they've slept with you, usually by the second or third date, they start calling or texting after you hooked up. And then they're starting the initial phases of pursuing you. And that's what you want, is you want to create the conditions where you're not in a rush. And also she starts to think that she likes you more than you like her. The reality is women are more attracted if they think they like you more than you like them. But when you communicate the opposite, when one of the video newsletters I was doing this morning, the guy looked like he was a cherry picker. He had a date on a Friday night. There was a lot of kissing and fooling around. They went back to her house and they didn't have sex because she was a little too drunk. And so 2 days later, on Sunday, he texted her to invite her to a barbecue. And I don't know if he was having a group party the next day or whatever, but he didn't ask her, hey, when are you free to get together? He just said, hey, how about a barbecue tomorrow at my house? And women aren't stupid. This is a 30-year-old woman who's a nurse, and she's been around the block a few times. And so we typically tend to focus on getting laid and having sex. And so the way his mind is working is thinking, hey, we almost had sex Friday night, so let me just invite her over to my house and then we'll have sex then. And so what happens is he doesn't make a definite date. She says, I'll basically get back to you. And he leaves his evening open for her, and she doesn't get back to him. And now a week or two have gone by, and he hasn't reached out. He hasn't heard from her. But in his mind, he thinks she's supposed to do all the pursuing now, and his work is over. And what happened was, instead of for the third date, picking her up and or going to her house because he's already been there, he stayed the night. She made made him coffee and like a little breakfast or whatever before he left the next morning. He's thinking he's just, the next date, they'll just pick up instantaneously where they left off. And so the formula is hang out, have fun, hook up in that order. And so each date is its own event. You make your moves physically when she's open and receptive to it, but you still start out by going on a date. And so what he should have done is I would have personally waited till Tuesday or Wednesday to make the third date, maybe over the following weekend. But you could tell he had a date on Friday night, contacts her 2 days later, trying to make a Monday date so he can get laid. And she's not stupid. She knew what he was trying to do, and that's why. And she'd never been to his house before, and they hadn't had sex, but he just assumed that they'll just pick up right afterwards. And so now, weeks later, he hasn't heard from her because he thinks, oh, well, I have to wait for her to get back to me. And again, he's a cherry picker, didn't really understand it. And so what he did, trying to set the third date, he just made a maybe date. And so he was waiting to hear back from her, and she was like, I'll let you know if I can make it. And so he basically accepted that, which again, that's the opposite of what the book says, and nothing happened. And so the idea is that what he should have done was called, texted, try to make the third date, gone and picked her up, gone 2-3 different places, and then when they're all over each other, they end up back at his place. And I see a lot of guys doing that. They're cherry picking. They're just focused on getting laid. What's the magic panty dropper line? What's the quickest way to get in her pants? And again, and this woman's very beautiful, so it's not like this is the first. She's 30 years old. It's not her first rodeo. She knows what he's up to. And so he just wasn't smooth. It's like he thought because he did all that for the first 2 dates, and now the third date, she's just basically ready to come over and fuck him. And instead, he's got blue balls and he's hanging out with Rosie Palms and her 5 friends.
That was a newsletter?
That was, yeah, it was one of the newsletters.
Oh.
So I would assume your experience has been lots of times guys are really anxious to get in bed with you. They're really anxious to lock you down to a commitment, and most of the guys you've been out with are moving at a much faster pace than you're ready for.
Yeah, they already have everything planned out in their heads. Like they're really strategic with it.
And you could sniff it, you could see it a mile away.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh no, that's not what's gonna happen here. Especially when they think that just because we've gone out like on 2 or 3 dates, they think that I owe them loyalty. Like,
And sex.
and sex. Like you can't go out with anyone else, or I am expecting you to just be committed to me. And I'm like, I'm still single. We're not dating, so
I barely know you.
I barely know you.
So, point being is you're trying to go slower. You're not trying to lock her down. If she's not ready to be seduced, it's you got to back off. And just because you got really far the night before doesn't mean you're like, oh, well, I don't even have to take her out on a date the next time. I'll just invite her over for a barbecue and then we'll get to sex. I could tell that the guy was cherry picking, didn't want to take the time to read the book, and it's just a bad way to go.
I just got into my first serious relationship, been casually dating my whole life, tips on keeping attraction, respect, genuine desire long term.
Know the book backwards and forwards. Because I've been doing this so long, I have so many clients that got married, got into a long-term relationship, started a family, and they come back after 7 years, 10 years, and they realize they completely got away from the book. And the guys that do well, they read the book at least once every 6 months, at the bare minimum once a year. And they're always amazed at how much they backslide, even in just 6 months or a year, just because whatever you observe, you participate in. So if you're constantly consuming traditional media, you're re-brainwashing yourself to do things that are the opposite of the book. And since it happens over many days, weeks, and months, you don't realize that you're backsliding until your girl no longer wants to sleep with you. And they all do the same things. The guy stops dating, courting his girl, usually because they're trying to save money, and they don't make her feel heard and understood. And when you do that, the relationship is going to deteriorate pretty quickly.
He said, what's the balance of letting your girl initiate physical intimacy and you making the move? Sometimes I feel like I'm not making the first move enough.
Well, again, at the end of the day, as I talk about during the course of the date, the formula is hang out, have fun, hook up. And during your date, when she feels comfortable and she's ready to be touched, she starts bumping into you, she starts touching you, she gets extra close to the point where she's literally, standing next to you, bumping into you, walking down the street. That's her invitation to say, hey, touching is okay. That's like her invitation to escalate things. And so that's what you do. It's like you kind of wait until she starts touching you, getting close to you, and then you kiss her and you move. Again, all these things are detailed in the book of when she's ready to be touched, kissed, and seduced. So it's not that you turn into a statue or a robot. This is still part of holding out a little bit longer and going slower than she is. And so when she starts bumping into you and touching your arm, or she, gets out of her chair and comes and sits next to you at the dinner table or the booth, and you do the kiss test when she does that and she's looking at your lips too, then you go for the kiss. And so it's the same process over and over and over. When women want to be touched and they want to be physical, they get close to you. And when they're not, they're going to be a little distant. And so that's all you're doing is just kind of waiting for that moment when she's warmed up and she got the motor running. She got the motor running.